What is the most dangerous assumption SOC teams make about their own visibility into their environment?
SOC teams, my colleagues might kill me for this, but we like to think we see it all. Even I am to blame in that zone. Most SOC teams are still living in the known. The reality is, that's what you think. That's what you have. They are relying on the logs generated by a human-written system, which can technically be bypassed by a human-written system. My agent in my own lab escaped out of my lab, and it spooked the hell out of me. I do have firewalls and jump servers segregating my lab, and my audit basically said one thing. At one point, I did use the jump server through the AI. It remembered it. It knew how to get out of it. I treat AI as a malware, sadly, because to me, it's doing things that a malware probably would be doing. That's how I know you have an AI in the system, you have AI in your environment. Some application all of a sudden running a cron job, or all of a sudden running a launch control, or running PowerShell or a batch or a shell. You are not supposed to do it. If you are doing it, it means bad.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for listening to another episode of Beyond the Alert. Today, I have the pleasure of speaking with Dhruv Majumdar, VP of Security Solutions at Fleet Device Management. Thanks for chatting with me today.
Thank you, Anne, for having me on the call.
Okay, so you have a lot to share, so let's dive right in. So the first question is, most security teams are drowning in alerts that they won't investigate. Why has the problem gotten worse and not better despite all of the tech and tooling that we have out there?
Yeah, I think the first question, and it is a tough one to digest, the fact that this is a problem. This is not a problem just because of AI is on the rise, or it's on the rise since the last 3 years or so in the scope that we realize it today. But let me take a step back, and because I think I've seen this problem ever since I entered myself into this industry. And so it's not a problem of today's world. It was a problem 20 years ago. It was a problem 10 years ago. It's a problem today. And it's multifold. One is shortage of skills, and that keeps growing. It's not actually decreasing, which is a sad reality. And that might be the way we educate our younger generations to come, or how we train, how we provide them the services that they're capable of providing over time. So those all play a very important factor. But nonetheless, what we're looking at today is, and this is something that I've seen when I talk to my other CISO friends or colleagues or clients that I've served in the past, is they all want to have a simple solution. There is nothing simple in life, and that's crucial, right? And the simple solution being, well, we have the best EDR. We have the world's best XDR. These terminologies are probably not new to anyone and everyone listening to this call. And the list goes on. So what that problem then embarks on is you have a multi-orchestrated, multi-domain, multi-vendor, multi-ecosystem, tool sprawl, skill sprawl, as well as how do you get them into one pane of glass view to get things moving faster. And what has happened in the last couple of years is AI is a single shot. AI is a single pane of glass for what it does. And for the red teamers to be successful, they just need to be right once. For the defenders, they have to be right all the time. So if I now get into the AI territory, what we are seeing now is the amplification of the attacks. The simplification of the templates that took maybe time, at least 24 hours to develop, that's now being developed through template forms. So you are getting all those templates, may that be phishing, whatever. Those things are on the rise just because of the simplicity of how you can reach them and how you can get them. So what I've tried to portray so far is the fact that the problem that we are seeing today is not necessarily a new tech problem. It was a problem that existed, and it is a problem that we are seeing evolving and amplified because of AI. But going back to your original question of the alerts and the noise, that has always been there. You just are seeing more and more alerts. If I take a look at what AI has started doing is, well, before you had 5,000 alerts, which you couldn't keep up. Now you have 50,000 alerts. You can't keep up. Tomorrow it might be 500,000 alerts and you can't keep up. My personal opinion, I will probably hold it for the last because I believe this domain is less about technology, more about the culture. And unless you fix the culture, unless you fix from the basics and the ground zero, this hygiene problem will always have issues. And you are seeing the outcome, which is the alert. The more and more alert doesn't necessarily mean the more and more agents you put in. Because the next question will be, well, now the agents can detect better. Who's going to do the response? You don't want to introduce an AI that's going to do a response which shuts down a business, and then next thing you know, you're doing a loss for $30 million per hour. And that's something you can't digest, right? So you can't have an AI agent autonomously doing all that so-called alert triaging, or automated response on its own, which means human in the loop is important, even though there is AI. But obviously, AI will fast track your life. AI will do everything that it does really good. But the point still being, you have to understand the risk that you're owing, and not just understand, do something about it from day one. That might be user training, harsher policies, making sure that your engineering team understands why you are implementing a specific policy that might hinder their day-to-day operations, but it's necessary. I actually, internally, we were having a chit chat about the day Striker happened. We are an MDM shop today, like where I work today. We have MDM, and I was basically saying, like, the first time I saw Intune, and the first thing that came to my mind, because like I came from a red team world, was, wow, all I need was access to that admin account or the service accounts. Next thing I know, there is going to be kinetic impact. That was 5 years ago when I thought of it. I always used to think that ransomwares, it's funny because you are getting out of it just by paying money. What if they don't need the money and they are just in there for kinetic impact, which is what we're seeing today, a lot more and more. And the ideology that I share is this is a game of war. There is no difference between the two. If a bomb drops, you literally see it physically. When an IT-based stuff happens, you realize the potential over time. So you might not have physical damage yet, but nonetheless, the damage is economics, and the damage is a multi-factor of scales of economics on that. So the idea would be, if your nuclear bomb being dropped has a 2 key at the minimum, why not have every application that has a widespread kinetic impact have 2 key system or a multi admin based approval system? Why should there be the ideology of, well, we trust this admin, so we're just going to give him the golden key to the kingdom because that's the way we do stuff? Well, you can do it and you can keep having the same problem. And we're going to keep having the same talk every time. So what I'm trying to explain over here is alert problem is on the rise. I absolutely agree. But the treatment of that or the response to that should not just be a technical response. It is identity fraud that's on the rise. It is identity theft that's on the rise. It's token based. It's how you use the technology that was created to make your life easier. Same thing with AI. It was built to make things move faster, but it has a good side and a bad side. And so was the other technologies that was built. So the question you have to answer is, you wouldn't trust your house key with any one of your neighbors. And even if you do, you might have a backup plan for it. So why not just do the same thing when it comes to your IT and security? But with that, I think I think focus should be on culture, hygiene, and philosophy at end of the day.
I agree, which is part of the reason why I have this podcast, because we talk about, especially on the vendor side, the marketing speak, the sales speak, selling all day long. It's all about the tech and competing with other vendors. But what we miss is the human element, the company culture, and the teams. And that's what I've really enjoyed bringing out in this podcast as well, because to me, it's such a big miss, because if you don't have the right team or the right culture, the tech doesn't matter.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, moving on to the next one. You've moved from consulting at EY and Deloitte to building a vendor product. So how does that shift and change the way that you think about what security teams need?
I think, again, I have to take a step back to go before EY. Before EY, I was part of Splunk. I was building out a lot of the new UEBA stuff, so user behavior anomaly detections. A lot of the things that later on became known as Phantom in the world of Splunk. So I do come from a product side. I actually had the luxury and luck of working inside pure corporations like energy sectors, at the same time oil sectors, and later on moved to product, and then I figured if I really wanted to help people, need to have my own startup. And that's why in 2016 and 2015, we actually came up with a company that was called Elevated Prompt. That was a Canadian-based startup. What we were doing back then was threat hunting, which is MXDR or MDR, before Gartner even coined the word. I think that was done in 2021. My memory doesn't serve me right, but in 2019 or 2021, somewhere between that. The idea was, if you have one single layer of defense and no one's auditing it, you will never know what bypasses you. And let's be honest, if things were made by humans, if you think that it cannot be bypassed, you're dreaming and you're living in a la la land, end of the day. Unless there is a physical gap, there is no way you can actually be assured that you are actually not breached. So the mindset that we had in that company and the team was basically, you are always breached. Let's see if we can find it. And so we were actually very successful in that. And that's how we got acquired to Ernst and Young. And that's how we moved, the entire team moved to Ernst and Young. And we basically kept on building that. We were a bunch of nerds doing that without a sales engine, and consulting allowed us to go do it. And that's why we moved to consulting. I was not a huge fan of consulting, to be honest, because the way I saw consulting, and this might be biased, but my view of consulting was, you have a lot of generalists. So they are good in a very horizontal way for all domains included. But when it really comes to vertical knowledge, they just don't have it. And so in my view, consulting was not the best way to do it. But it actually gave us the opportunity to, hey, I always kept complaining that, consulting means XYZ. Why don't I actually try go in and fix this? And at least in that particular domain umbrella where I would sit or my team would sit, we could champion that vertical strength, vertical skills. And I think we were very successful in that sense. And then later on, we just wanted to do more. And that's why the shift to Deloitte. And then the honest reality was too much red tapes. I don't like my hands being tied. I like things to move as speed allows it to, and technology allows it to. Because if you don't allow it, no one's going to wait. Someone's going to do it. And all I am seeing is I'm not able to do it. And that was one of the frustrations I had as part of my job, even though it was great. It was a very cushiony job and lovely team. I think some brilliant people that I had the pleasure to work with. And we still keep in touch, but I just wanted to go do something more and build more and more. I like innovation. And Fleet used to be actually part of my stack of doing threat hunting, providing more context per alert. Because I think I'll get back to it later on, but maybe a good topic of conversation. So Fleet used to be part of so I used to be a client of Fleet in my Deloitte life. So I knew them ever since the startup. So I knew them for over 10 years, ever since OS Query was built inside Facebook by Zach. So we go back literally from 2015. We knew each other in that sense. So it wasn't like a huge move in that sense. But I figured, I've known these guys. There's a lot of really cool stuff they're working on. And I keep saying, which is, security cannot win if it's treated as only security. You have to treat a user, an asset, as a risk. And you have to quantify what risk they belong to based on their behavior, based on the endpoint they used, based on scorings, and based on telemetries that can be either behavior driven or perceived risk. That can be purely a you are admin, so you have a higher risk if you were to be breached. That's a very easy example. So they are doing all that today. So they embarked on the journey of quantifying vulnerability and allowing people to implement business layer logic into that data set. At the same time, MDM being one of the things that they have been really successful at. And obviously, they go back to the world of security where, everything OS Query can do, which is enriching your context, real-time telemetry, or generate whatever questions you might have during an investigation. And I was like, there is a lot of things that I've learned in the industry that I can help this team envision. And they have lovely engineers internally over here. So we would be able to make something really nice happen. And that's the whole idea. That's why I joined them last year in September. So I guess a long answer, but I think the history was very important.
And intentional. This is something you don't really see on a LinkedIn profile, right? How one person goes from one role to the next, and there's always a story behind it, but on paper you just don't see that. So So most organizations think of asset inventory as a list. Why is treating it as a graph fundamentally different and better, and a better way to understand the risk?
Huh, yeah, that's a loaded question. I'll give you I'll give you my version of why I enjoy graph. And I do know people at the very same level as I am, or even level higher than I am. When it comes to engineering, not talking about titles in general, but technology and skills adaptation and intelligence capability. Someone would say graph is not the way. Someone would say graph is the way. I am a believer of both are the ways. And when I say both, I mean a list is important, a graph is also important. But my answer to graph is actually goes before I actually joined cyber. I came to Canada to study genetic engineering and human mutations. I was not even in cybersecurity. And one of my favorite topics was protein synthesis or gene and DNA tampering, which is now today called as CRISPR. And the only way I was able to do that and enjoy it really was understanding how changing one strand over here impacts over hundreds and billions others, right? And it was fascinating to see. And it's fascinating to see that in real time, how one node has a string effect to something else. Like we live in the world of spider webs, end of the day. You pull something over here, depends on how far it is and how many points and dots removed, you will have to have an implication on it. So I like to see all stuff in that specific way. So my idea was, and this is something maybe Google came up with their map at the very beginning, which is the shortest distance, right? To go from point A to point D. How do you go? And if you really read that concept, is there are a gazillion ways to go. There is things on one path versus things on the other path. But the shortest way is this, but it also showed the possibility of what you are not taking. So it's like giving you a peek in the world of programming. You're actually able to peek, but you're not taking it. And that's the idea I like to think of when I work with graph engines in general, which is it's crucial when you're looking into any subject. And if you have enough data, they might not be relevant for that specific task on hand, but that context is very, very rich, that allows you to identify things that might not have been in your attention span, might not have been in your timeline, might not have been quantified accordingly. But if you were to able to connect one node to another and keep that in a continuous way, ever growing, you can always do that. And you're seeing that in the world of AI today. Like I think even the last couple of the graph based memory that came out, or hashing, you can quantify graph in a different way by calling it hashing, depending on what kind of hash you are using. Like if you were using Bloom filters and stuff like that, and you put that in the world of AI, AI all of a sudden can have longer memory, which is awesome. AI now can connect dots way faster. AI now can use a lot less tokens than if those were not there. And that's the whole idea behind graph. So I like thinking both in graph when needed, and list being the fact that, okay, I can just check things out and this is what it is, a simple way to visualize. So I think it's not one versus the other. It's what's needed at that moment, or the fact that you have these ways to visualize something. And I think that's a superpower to have at any given point in time for anything and everything, even alerts. I think the first question was too many alerts. Can you quantify how many alerts per system, per user, per same time span, per same behavior in MITRE world, and per same response criteria? And if you can do all that in real time, you might all of a sudden have quantified a way to say, I have 50,000 alerts, but really 3 users are popping up, and this is what we need to go investigate. Forget about the alerts, right? And so it's not that easy as the way I put it, but the idea is nonetheless very valid in that sense.
Well done. I like giving people tough questions that are really broad because I know that they're not necessarily true, and then you have to explain and give context, and that's where all the good stuff is and the learnings. All right. So shadow IT has been a problem for years. What makes shadow AI, copilots, agents, dev tools different and more dangerous version of that problem?
The first thing is data leakage. I am hugely concerned with one thing. Like, I love AI, but I don't like the fact that they're controlled by vendor, which is the same problem I had during a product from security itself. I don't like the concept of a black box, period. Because if you look at some of the even newer vulnerabilities, newer disclosure, the NPM, React might be, you can exclude that, but the NPM stuff, a lot of them impacted AIs that are heavily used. The Light LLM was actually something that even I used in my own home lab, and they were compromised. Now, the only benefit is by design, my brain has adjusted to the fact that do not do n. Always do n-1 or n-2 and make sure everything's pinned. And if it's not pinned, you're not doing it correctly. When I say pinned, the versions are pinned. You know where you are upgrading to. Not just, oh, God save us, and we upgrade to the latest version. So I technically, going back to shadow IT, it has always been a problem, which is you need to know who is installing what and what is the purpose. That might be a licensing problem from if you are looking from that lens, but largely it can be a problem of things that you don't want to own, now you have. And then you have the problem of, well, is it a malware? Or a PUP. In the old world, you can have a PUP as well, like siphoning out all sensitive information, but nothing else it's doing. Or just sitting there, it's not a good software, but you have it as part of your enterprise. Next thing you know, you get compromised, and now you actually have a compromise on a sitting duck, which was a one user, one system, one specific library, or one specific application. That's a very easy way of putting shadow IT, but if you now enlarge the scope, you will see like that happens all over the place, specifically if you are a very heavy tech focused and engineering focused group. You tend to use the world's best whatever is available. That can be AIs, because the funny thing with AI today is there is no definitive leader yet. So one day is this company, the other day is that company. So you're flipping back and forth, whoever has the best model, and trying to do your part as fast as possible. But no one's reading the fine print. When you are giving up your project, you are giving up your intelligence to that company. Some of those companies that actually have come to market and literally said, we are scraping that data. In the world of AI, coding skill is not the biggest skills. I think the biggest skill is how you are creating that recipe to get that job done, the SaaS application. Because the reality is today there is a context limitation. Tomorrow, I don't think there will be, right? And once that is true, people are still skeptical about the fact that SaaS companies are having a huge impact. But if you're a behemoth of a SaaS company, you're probably not impacted because the AI just can't read your context that fast and make a clone version of you exactly the way you operate. But if you're a smaller SaaS, 50,000 lines of code or a million lines of code, you're probably going to be replaced, or already we're seeing that. Not necessarily a bad thing. All that means is you can either use that to your benefit to make it even better, more secure by design, more efficient in its outcomes and the features that it has. So the point is, coding, I think Jason from NVIDIA came out and said the exact same thing. It's going to be a knowledge of the past. What's going to be needed in the world of AI, I personally believe, is the idea. What needs to be solved? How fast can you solve it? And how easy it is for digesting by the people that are actually going to be using it. And then let the AI do it. I think that's the way evolution will happen. At some point, what I just said will also become obsolete, just FYI. I just don't know the time, but I think it's coming at some point. So the point with AI, what I mentioned was, we were talking about shadow IT. That problem is real. AI, again, just amplified it. And AI itself is now part of shadow IT, because there is so many local MCPs, local agent, local skills. Some skills are poisoned by prompt. So I think one of the best ones that I read, like I say best because not because of the way it was intended, but the fact that someone thought of it and implemented it as a way to do an attack is fascinating, because whoever that individual that came up with that idea should not be taken lightly, because that guy was a genius. Let's just accept that. Like, you can be on the bad side or the good side, but if you're a genius, you are a genius. And like one of the attacks that I just saw was exploiting how GitHub itself works. And it was a simple prompt attack, prompt based, that lived inside a skills file. Every time it gets called, it would basically use GitHub's own image wrapper. And because it's an image wrapper, it was bypassing the so-called checks, even if we had it. And the data was being siphoned to a C2 server or whatever, a sync server, whatever that would have been. Simple in the way it was executed, but amazing in the way it was designed. Going back to our problem, which is shadow IT, is now what do you do, right? So you have this problem of already people installing weird stuff, goes back decades old, and we haven't even solved that. Whereas now you have AIs where it's not about an application, it's more about the application along with its plugins, along with its skills files, along with its other files that it might use or leverage. And sometimes, because again of the speed to the market and the speed to the business that you represent, sometimes you do get carried away. That includes me as well. You do get carried away that, oh, someone just released this, maybe I should try it. Try it in your sandbox. Don't try it on corporate, right? And even if you did, that is a shadow IT problem now. And how do you solve it becomes a problem. And my way of doing that is actually really the heavy stick way, which is it should not be solved. It should not be allowed, period. But you should entertain and give people this idea and the scope and environments where they can still go try it. It's not an easy problem to fix. It means how do you segment different MCPs, different agent with the IDPs that it's going to be using? Can you actually truly sandbox it? Because the idea of sandbox is very weird. Like when you share your IDP information, you share your token by mistake as part of your session, the AI now knows and the AI can go to that environment and do stuff. So what do you really mean by sandbox is like, you have to re-understand sandbox. It's not just the computer you're working on or the host you're working on. It's what you are feeding that AI now that it has access to all of a sudden. So it's technically, think of sandbox, think of IDP sandbox. Like you have to use tokens. It's not that tough. You have to just make sure like once you're done with the session, you actually literally burn that token, right? It's gone, right? And I'm not referencing an AI token. I'm talking about actual session tokens or passphrase, whatever you're using. And make sure like those things are not leveraged in production at all. So that due diligence, again, it's a cultural shift, rather how you deal with technology. It's not a technology problem at this point in time. I believe technology is just showcasing the problems that used to exist in the past in a lot more hyper scale and more amplified way.
I agree. And that's the interesting part when we were thinking of, how can teams test things? What does the culture look like? I think a lot of times that individuals go rogue, employees in a company, and say, I'm just going to do this and not ask IT, is because cybersecurity department is so swamped and the average employee doesn't understand why or to what degree and what you guys have to deal with, right? That they don't want to wait until you have cycles to take a look and give them instructions. And so they just go ahead. And so then, to your point, that's a cultural problem, right?
Absolutely. And sadly, the reality is sometimes it's not that the user is intending to. Like, I have to say this because I do come from the red team side, so my brain operates in both with the flip-flop manner, which is you have to think bad. And if you think bad, you will very quickly realize that even if you wanted to think that all humans are good, the reality is they are not. They are going to do things that you didn't think of. You trusted them. So what do you mean by trust needs to be re-vetted? And you have to re-quantify your risk. Some people just would take up jobs, and we have seen that multiple times, just so that they can steal company credentials and company details and can leak that to another country so that they can win your contracts when the contracts goes out. That's a very simplified way of saying the other things that I've actually seen in life. They are all over the place. So in order to do your due diligence, you really have to understand the fact that you cannot really trust anything. Sadly, that's the reality we live in. And if you cannot trust anything, it should be based on the design of how you do kernel design, how you do application, and how you do segmentation. And it's not about trust. There is nothing called trust. Like, trust is earned, but even if it's earned for a limited time span. And we need to apply that for the same concepts inside technology.
Well said. So that segues nicely into our next question of what is the most dangerous assumption SOC teams make about their own visibility into their environment?
SOC teams, my colleagues might kill me for this, but we like to think we see it all. Even I am to blame in that zone. When I was growing up in what I had access to, I used to think the amount of things that we can see, no one else has access, right? The reality is, data is really the new gold, if it wasn't already. And the reality is, sometimes there is something that I like to say to all teams that I work with. There is three things in life. One is known, the other one is known unknown, and then really unknown. The known unknown is a mature team, that you have the appetite and the intelligence to know what you do not know. You actually are now doing good. Most SOC teams are still living in the known, which is, I have this much data, I think I'm able to see it. Their leaders thinks the same. But period, have you asked that things that actually bypasses your EDRs? Do you have another way to look at it? Most of the time, at least in my career, that spans over 14 years now, or 15 now, doing pure cybersecurity and defending and red team. 99% of the time, the organizations think that, oh, I have the world's best EDR, world's best tools. Why should just piggyback on EDR, world's best firewalls, whatever. That, okay, I have the full visibility. The reality is, that's what you think. That's what you have. How about things that you don't know?
It's culture again, too, right? Cultural mindset.
Yep. Because they are relying on the logs generated by a human written system, which can technically be bypassed by a human written system. It can be firewalls where you don't send the right packets, you send the packets malformed and they get recreated behind the scenes. You can send big packets where they're going to be treated as like a Netflix data, so you might be dropping it as in from your visibility, and that's just your network. The same logic can be applied to your applications, your application logs, your EDRs, and we have the EDR silencers. I think that was good to see that having a bit more limelight, because I've always been using it for the last decade when I had to prove my point, but it was always limited. So the fact that it came on news and the fact that they were talking about it openly only amplifies that it's not that you should not have the world's best EDR. You absolutely should. What's auditing your EDR? Who is auditing the auditor? And where that actually stops? That's also a very important gap that we have, is you like to think that you're auditing things. I loved it. Part of SOC. Oh yeah, I have a trail of that. Oh yeah, I have that line. And that's what says, what if it is a corrupted something that did not allow that line to be generated? Now you just don't have it. So it's the math function of what you know on that day when the incident was happening versus what you don't know. What really scares me is the unknown, which is based on everything in my career, everything that I had access to, and what allowed my intelligence to be formed, allows me to think about certain things and allows me to not to think about certain things and allow me to be biased for certain things. So the area of unknown is really what keeps me up awake at night, because what if there are tools that are just purely bypassing? What if there is actually a C2, and this is a food for thought for whoever's going to pick it up next, will be in certain countries, you can have gag orders and you are going to be subpoenaed by whoever, and you are supposed to make a so-called backdoor. That's not a malware, that's built-in function. Are you looking at it? If you're looking at it, what are you doing about it? Who is doing anything about it if your engineers already is compromised because of the government? And we're talking about government. What if it's not a government, they just got paid a lot of money to do it? So this continuous problem of the unknown is a big worry. And the more you think about how to solve it, you will see that it's not very easy to actually do this, including AIs. Like, we are using AIs. It's moving so fast. My biggest problem with AI today is it's writing code faster than my team can vet it. It's writing things that sometimes I don't understand. It's just the outcome is exactly what we wanted, but the way it's writing it, I just don't know. That just might be because the way it's written. And when it's 100,000 lines of code at the minimum, who has the time to actually go read all that? to the point of certain companies coming out openly and saying, now we have given up even the hope of re-looking at what the AI wrote because we just don't understand what they're writing anymore. To the point of where AI starts writing their own language for the efficiency of what they want to be doing. What if there is built-in backdoors? What if there is built-in things, right? So sometimes I think about, well, all these companies are doing a really good job, but at the same time, are we focused enough to think about you need to be owning your own AI? It should not be owned by someone else. Because the moment something's owned by someone else, you run into this problem of data leakage. And you can use all the fancy words like DLP and this and that, but the people that knows how to bypass them, they're just giggling, right? Like you can have the world's best tools, but the really serious players, they know how to actually bypass those, any given technology. And if you really are serious about how to protect your organization, your team, your company, and if the company is serious enough, there's a lot of things that we need to improve on. Starting maybe the simplified fact is, we talked about culture, so I'm not going to repeat it, but if I can, I would, because I think that's the most important thing. And the other part is never think that you are done with your OODA loop. The OODA loop is never finished. That's why it's a loop. And if you think it's finished, you're probably running into problem. And you have to always understand what you don't understand and grow up into that. And it's a tough battle, and you have to figure out a way to mitigate that or gain visibility to before you start mitigating. But it's tough. It's very easy to say, I keep saying this, but at the same time, to actually implement it and get it done with the budget constraints that most of the companies are dealing with, it is a very, very tough battle. The easy one maybe would be culture.
Because there's so many pros and cons to weigh and the risk associated with each of those, right? The known knowns, the known unknowns, the unknown unknowns. And you also need the right kind of leadership to make sure you're prioritizing what makes sense for the company and the business. So I always give you guys a lot of kudos for sleeping at night.
Well, actually, I do enjoy the fact that I'm no longer in a full-blown incident response hat. That was a tough job. So if I can give a pat at the back for every incident responder that ever lived or living and doing that, it's a very tough job. I don't think you can compare. I wouldn't even do justice for people that does it. And you can't really compare it with any other job, because if you get into comparison, people tend to get biased. But the problem is, no one realizes how much hard work that incident responders or people that are doing MXDR actually lives through, because end of the day, you don't get a pat at your back when you're doing the right thing, which is what you are doing most of the time. But you get all the shit on your face when you missed that one in 365 days. I personally lived through 13 ransomwares. Not proud of that. But I'm proud of the fact that all my clients that actually had the ransomware either to happen or was going to happen, we caught it before it actually went to full-fledged, and they did a full recovery within 24 hours, right? And so, and out of that, 2 of them, I was not even in cyber when I was part of the team, purely just doing the defense and doing your due diligence. That might be just backup, make sure your backups are tested, and make sure they're done not just in tape drives that no one has access to, and you are actually testing it. So tabletop exercises to educate your leaders. At the same time, operationally, are you fit? Can you do it whenever needed? That due diligence saved me twice. When we didn't have, this was back in 2015, I believe. We didn't have the world's best EDRs, and what that terminology meant, no one even knew. But ransomware was still happening. Moving over to 2019, or us able to help. I remember we were about 3 minutes out from the interactive directory on a hypervisor being fully encrypted. It was saved, and that did not happen. And the reason was because you have, or luckily, whatever that day was, because it's all about that day, that moment. That day we had full visibility. We had full audit log of who missed what alerts 24 hours ago. And that was being re-audited by a machine learning algorithm. And that flagged it 7 hours later. And we also had the right SOAR tool to actually block it from actually happening. That was a lucky day.
Everything aligned.
You just got aligned. What if one did not, right? And anyone who lived in the cyber world for long enough, you will have one of those days when things did not line up. Your response tool just stopped responding. It needed a server reboot because an update was waiting. That also happened for a SOAR tool. And I was giggling it wasn't my team, but I was giggling away. I shouldn't be, but I was. I'm like, who designs a SOAR tool in this particular manner? Right? It's like your rocket's off to moon, but let's do a Windows update right now. Which is a known problem, but are you prepared for that, right? So it's a lot about luck. I always believe that. But are you at least doing your due diligence to make sure? And going back to the concept of NXDR or incident response, that's a very tough job for the folks that's doing it day to day. Use AI in the best form that you can to augment your power, so to say, whatever the powers you have today, augment AI to make sure they are amplified, makes your life easier. But also think about, if you do this, at what cost to your own industry, to your own team. And so always figure out the best way to do it, rather just doing it. I see this mentality, don't just go do it, think before you do it. But also the other part is true, don't just keep thinking, also do it. so it's that right balance. It's about the balance.
Yeah, and I think it's usually the subconscious tells you to hit that easy button with AI because you just do it, right? But to your point, you think about the unknowns and is it worth it versus the outcome. And probably the average person doesn't think through that at all.
No, like I'm not even bringing the average person, because then I don't have answers. Because like my wife, she's in IT too. And when we talk about AI, and she does some phenomenal stuff with AI that I can never do. But that's in the world of content creation and videos and this and that. But I don't know how she's doing any of that. I don't have any clue. But when I talk about the world of AI that I belong to, she's on the same page. She doesn't have any clue of what I am doing and how it's being done. So I'm talking about two highly qualified. She actually, like, from an education standpoint, she's way more qualified than I am. But if I take that into the consideration of educated people or intelligent people that had the chance and the time to invest and learn technology and how they're growing, are having a hard time to keep up. I can't bring in people that do not live in the world in technology in this idea of they knowing anything. The best examples is when I talk with AI with my parents, they just have no clue. So I try to simplify it, that just don't do that. Like, focus on the outcome, just don't do it. Or focus on that and don't, because there is no way I can explain the whole thing.
They wouldn't be able to catch up at this point.
Yeah, and I think that's true for a lot of people, and they don't necessarily have to be senior citizens in general. I think that's true for people even for my age, just in a different industry. So it's a serious concern, and I don't see much being enforced, because it's a challenge. If you enforce, you slow down, and China won't, and there's a big race of who goes to that first. So there is this problem, but that's something is challenging. I don't have an answer. So I told you I have a simple question for someone to pick up. This would have been that part of the question, which is, you have to live in the world of bringing AI into your organization. At the same time, you have to be mindful of how that access is given. What are you doing about it? And how do you know that what you are going to be doing is actually true and that's going to work? Do you have a contingency plan that if it doesn't work, how you're going to save your back and how you're going to save your organization's back as well?
That's a loaded question.
It is. It keeps me awake. I don't have an answer, so I'll be listening in to see anyone that thinks they have an answer, because I think the world we are heading into, it's gonna be tough. I keep saying this. It's not technology; it's the humans that works with the technology. So that's the problem. End of the day.
Yes, we're our own worst enemies. So, if you could give one piece of advice to a security leader who has not started their AI transformation yet, what would it be?
Start as soon as you can because technology is evolving as quickly as your brain can't even think about it. You wake up, some milestone has been achieved in the other world. That's happening in less than 24 hours. If I bring in Mythos as a project or Glasswing as a project, apart from all the marketing gimmicks and everything else, the point is an AI can find stuff faster, will produce more noise faster. Out of all that noise, even if 1% is true, you have an extra problem in your hand. And so you have to fight AI with AI. So you have to get on it, on that bandwagon, but you also have to figure out how you do it sensibly, which is why I had that question, because I think about it on a daily basis. I haven't come across the best answers. Funny thing, I know it's not part of a question. Mythos or not, my agent in my own lab escaped so called out of my lab. And it spooked the hell out of me because I do have firewalls and jump servers segregating my lab. And my audit basically said one thing. At one point, I did use the jump server through the AI. It remembered it. It knew how to get out of it. That's the logical and based on logs I could track back to. So the point is, if you use anything sensitive through an AI, it probably will remember it. Are you doing your due diligence? It's not about sandbox. It's not about kernel evasion tactics. It's all things incorporated. The data you're feeding it will have something that you need to be aware of. It's where you're running it, and it's how you're connecting to it. It's the mat function of all. So the fact that someone comes out and says, "Whoa, we have a sandbox where this can run in this way," means nothing unless you are actually looking at it and auditing what the AI really is doing. I treat AI as a malware, sadly, because to me, it's doing things that a malware probably would be doing. That's how I know you have an AI in the system, you have AI in your environment. Some application all of a sudden running a cron job, or all of a sudden running a launch control, or running PowerShell or a batch or a shell. You are not supposed to do it. If you are doing it, it means bad. You identify it. But at the same time, you need to make sure that those people that were trying to use it, why they're trying to use it, and maybe give them a safe haven, so to say, to actually go use it. There are certain technologies that will allow you to do, but again, it's the time spent to get up and running. Maybe you should think there, and at the same time, parallel think how you give access to AI. That's my 2 cents. Because when the AI gets your data, lawyer is not going to come save you. The fine contracts means nothing. It's a leak. It's a leak. It's gone.
And lawyers are still getting up to speed on the AI world as well and how to wrangle that.
Exactly. Yes.
All right, that leaves us with the last question from David Groveman at Amtrust. How can your carrier do a better job of helping you prepare for an incident?
I think the best way to do it, and I think this is something where I did see my previous employer is doing a really good job. To be honest, it's the fact that you do a lot of actual tests. You make sure your leaders are on board. You make sure that your role-based access controls are actually regularly audited, checked, and maintained, and there's a backup plan. You have full communication of the leadership that is needed on the day, the D-Day, so to say, when that happens, because it will happen. You're just lucky that it hasn't happened yet. So let's not stay in the la-la land. But at the same time, you can avoid it and delay it from having to happen by doing the due diligence, which is something I mentioned to you as well, which is back in 2014, I was not even in cyber. The only thing that saved us to recover very, very quickly was the fact that we did our backups, tested our backups rigorously. That saved us, right? And we were fully up and running within 24 hours. Yes, a lot of folks had to ruin one night of sleep, but it's a lot better of ruining millions of dollars. At the same time, other things involved, including your mental health at that point in time. Because technically, as a human, you can't keep running on steroids for 3 days nonstop without sleep. But responders probably have to do that every now and then. And so it's training, it's tabletop exercises, it's making sure that those communications, that channel to be used is not in the compromised environment to begin with. It's a backup channel, it's maintained, it's not deactivated or going stale. It's what to do. It's like cheat sheet. If you do a cooking and you forget about it, but it was really good, you probably want to write down the recipe and keep it stored somewhere really nice. Why not do the same thing? Why just ransomware? Why not just even an IT failure? If that happens, you can move back very, very quickly. And over time, build that same mentality into the applications that you're using. We were just talking about the 2 key into MDM. Striker that happened, people can say, point fingers, but the problem is, pointing fingers is not going to solve it. Are you doing anything different that will make the life of the attacker that much tough? Is the mentality. So you put in honeypots, you put in jammers, you put in deceptions, you put in other tool sets that can be a canary token, whatever, right? That gives you early intelligence. And then you slowly enforce all these technologies into the applications that you're using. Because end of the day, it's not segmentation that's going to save you. It's going to delay. So segmentation, I'm not saying you shouldn't be doing it, but treat it as just one part of your entire portfolio of total segmentation by design. But that also hinders performance and operations and engineering and everything else, including day-to-day IT. So you have to get your buy-in from your CTOs and your CIOs and your board as to why this is important. The fact that it's 2026, everyone's talking about security and AI, but it's funny that CISOs still don't have a proper chair at the board, right? And if you don't have it, and the answer is very easy. Why they don't have it? Let's not go banter around the bush or beat around the bush. The thing is, their role is losing money on things that might protect you one day. Whereas everyone else is asking money because I can make you more money. That's as simple as it gets, right? And that's why they don't have a seat at the board. But for all the leaders, if you are listening in, are you going to treat your front door of the house in the exact same way? And if the answer is yes, well, then I can't really give you my brain dump. But end of the day, the answer probably is no, you won't be doing it. You're going to protect every ins and outs to your home, to your safe place in the best possible way. That's why you have safe houses. That's why you have bunkers, whatever, right? You build all these and they can't be built in one single day. You have to build towards that so that it gives you the peace of mind, because it's your business. If you don't protect it, it's going to have all these problems. Some of these problems might not be relevant to you today, but what if they start very quickly becoming relevant to you? Because of AI now, everything's getting amplified. So the point is, you are lucky that you might not be, and I'm talking about the actual boards, like people that are sitting at the board, their life might not be coming into danger because of all these stuff happening yet, but it might flip very, very quickly and they might be put in the front row, right? Because of the simple fact that AI is enabling you to do so much. So if you are not treating security with the exact same way you're treating your actual business, you need to. And that's my 2 cents, not just because I belong in the world of security. I believe it's as simple as how you protect your home, how you protect your loved ones needs to be the same thing in the world of IT, world of security.
Yeah, which brings it perfectly back to what you've been harping around on, which is culture and doing this with intent versus an afterthought. And that makes all the difference. Thank you, Dhruv. So where can people find you? How can they connect with you? This has been absolutely impactful and enlightening. And I love how you've shown throughout that you think outside of the box, which is exactly what is needed in this space.
How to contact? I don't do social, but I'm very inactive in most of my platforms except for LinkedIn. But in LinkedIn, I kid you not, I probably get about 500 messages per day or per week. Let's just say whatever the number you feel comfortable with. It's noise. I do use an AI to give me the intel that I need from those messages. But at the same time, that's the only platform available. So my LinkedIn is probably the best place. I am on Twitter, but it's very inactive. I only use it as an RSS feed or a scraper for other intel sources. But yeah, LinkedIn probably would be the only place for now.
So to the audience, use LinkedIn, use your message wisely. It is being parsed by AI.
Well, I think most of the people do. Sometimes I see the way the message is coming in. I think a lot of people are using other platforms in the way they are sending out messages in bulk. So I think people are doing it end of the day. And people that have a lot of crazy number of messages, probably you should use your AI, your own AI, not a paid AI, because that's your personal data. So think about it.
That's where it starts. Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. Same here, and it was great chatting. Thank you for having me.